Just a lot of people say, oh, he's trying to be Nirvana because we're a three-piece and I've got blonde hair and stuff like that. They won't say it. It's just because their hair's that long and I'm trying to grow, but it won't grow.
When Silverchair first broke out in 1995 with their debut album Frogstomp, they were instantly getting compared to Seattle bands and the grunge scene from the United States. Most of all, they were getting compared to Nirvana. Some say you could hear their Nirvana influence in maybe a couple of Silverchair songs. However, the main comparison would come down to lead singer Daniel Johns being compared to Kurt Cobain. From everything down to Johns' singing style to the way he looked. People in the media would call him Kurt Cobain's kid brother, and Silverchair were dubbed Nirvana in pajamas. In this 1995 interview, a young 15-year-old Daniel Johns was asked, when the first single came out, how many songs did you have? And Johns replied, we had about 10. The songs on the first EP were about the time when we were influenced by Soundgarden and Pearl Jam and all the Seattle bands, except for Nirvana. We don't really like Nirvana that much. The second single was more influenced by Soundgarden and Helmet. Then Johns was asked, did Kurt Cobain's death affect you? To which Johns responded, sort of. They kind of made the grunge thing, but we didn't go home and cry or anything like that. So that was the response from a 15-year-old Daniel Johns when Silverchair just first broke out on the scene. And those comparisons would continue on throughout Silverchair's career, at least their first 3 albums, which were much more heavy rock. So we go to the big day out, the big rock festival which hosts many bands from all around the world. And we go back to 1995 where Courtney Love's band Hole and Silverchair were both playing at the event. So this wasn't too long after Kurt had died, of course. And the reports are you had Courtney Love running around backstage yelling, where's that boy who looks like my husband but sounds like Eddie Vedder? Talking about Johns, of course. And apparently she was actually quite shocked and taken aback when she actually saw Daniel Johns with her own eyes. And she would be telling anyone who would listen that this blonde teenager looks like my f***ing dead husband. The story continues with Daniel Johns stating that Courtney didn't say a word to him at the big day out. She just peered into the Silverchair dressing room from the doorway. I swear to God, she just looked in, Johns says. She was doing this really mental look, and I didn't know what the hell she was doing. After that, she just walked away, and I didn't see her again. Daniel then said, people tell me I look like Kurt Cobain, but I don't think I do. And it was in January of 2015 at Triple J's Beat the Drum Festival, where popular Australian radio station Triple J was celebrating its 40th anniversary. And incidentally, Triple J was very instrumental in Silverchair's career as well. This was the radio station where they won that competition for their single Tomorrow, and they just never looked back from there. So at this Triple J concert, which was held in 2015 at the Sydney Domain, we had a very special performance by Daniel Johns. He was doing a cover version of a Nirvana song on piano, and that song was Smells Like Teen Spirit.
With the lights on, it's less dangerous. Here we are now, entertain us.
As you can hear there, Daniel put his own twist, totally put his own twist on this song. In the past, several artists have covered this song as well, Tori Amos being one of them, perhaps the most well-known. And at this show, you had Daniel Johns adding his name to that list as well. Something you would not have seen back in the Silverchair days with Daniel Johns and the band covering a Nirvana song. That just wouldn't have happened with all those comparisons going on. But here in 2015, Daniel Johns decided to do the song. The cover Daniel did this day on piano, where he was accompanied by a harp as well, was not grungy at all. In fact, just the total opposite. It was Daniel Johns putting his own spin on the song. It was his own take. something completely original to him. And as I say, it was just kind of funny seeing him do that song. I mean, as I say, you would never have seen Silverchair barely didn't even want to talk about Nirvana, let alone do a Nirvana cover back in the day. But here you go, several years later, Daniel Johns, he's doing a Nirvana cover. So it was kind of cool. No doubt Nirvana would have had an influence on early Silverchair along with other Seattle bands, but I think it's just that repetitive comparison that when they first broke especially, that they were being compared to Nirvana and Daniel Johns being compared to Kurt Cobain like all the time. Something that Daniel Johns and the band grew very tired of. Also, imagine having everybody come up to you saying, "Oh man, you look like Kurt Cobain, you sound like Kurt Cobain." For a 15, 16-year-old being told that like every day, all the time. And especially when you're just trying to do your own thing, be your own person, and have your own sound. And Silverchair did have their own sound. They were not a Nirvana knockoff band at all, in my opinion. As I say, they had their influences from those Seattle bands. They've admitted to that. That's fine. And those influences are in their music, no doubt about it. But I think the two bands, Nirvana and Silverchair, sounded quite different. And especially as Silverchair grew on in their catalog, they just totally went away from that grunge sound anyway. And as far as Daniel Johns being the next Kurt Cobain, well, I would say this guy, Gavin Rossdale from Bush, who broke with their debut album 16 Stone, that was back in 1994, I would say that band was much more Nirvana influenced. In the way he sings, he sounds much more like Kurt than Daniel does. That first album they came out with, 16 Stone, sounded more like Nirvana than Frogstomp did, in my opinion. And if you want to take it forward a few years with a band like Seether with their lead vocalist Sean Morgan, great vocalist by the way, nothing against him at all, but he sounds much more like Kurt Cobain than Daniel Johns ever did. Daniel had the long blonde hair, the blue eyes. Silverchair literally just came out right when Nirvana ended. So I think all that played into it as well. Grunge was still a happening thing at the time. Although the music scene was changing, grunge was still there. And as I say, Nirvana had just ended, and here came Silverchair, a band that looked like them at least. Three-piece. And they were seen as the new Nirvana, I guess. But I'll say it again, Silverchair definitely has their own sound. They are not a Nirvana-sounding band at all. The two bands do have completely different sounds. And speaking of Daniel Johns as a vocalist, well, at the time, people were comparing him more to Eddie Vedder than Kurt Cobain anyway, talking about that first record, Frogstomp. But I mean, Kurt Cobain had his own vocal style. There isn't anybody really who sings like Kurt sings. And especially as Daniel Johns went on in his career developing a falsetto and just singing totally differently. So I think the whole Daniel Johns versus Kurt Cobain thing early on in their career, sure, I can see how people would say that about Silverchair. But as I say, Daniel Johns and Kurt Cobain, at the end of the day, really, they had their own thing going on in their own way. And so what if you sing a bit like somebody else or you're influenced by other bands? Man, all music across all time has been influenced by something else. It's actually paying homage to those bands who have gone before you. Kind of like a tribute keeps what those bands in the past have done. It kind of like keeps it alive. It keeps it going forth, but in a different way. Like you don't just want to totally copy a band and do exactly what they did. That's different when you just totally copy someone 100% and just have nothing of your own style in there. You have your influences and you kind of bind that together with your own thing and your own style. And that's it. Simple as that. All bands do that. All bands have always done that and they'll continue to do that. That's how it works. There's nothing wrong with that. So no, Silverchair should not be raked over the coals for being a copycat of Nirvana. They were totally their own band. And Daniel Johns should not be raked over the coals for being a copycat of Kurt Cobain. He was his own musician and his own performer, had his own style, and did his own thing. And that's how I see that one, guys. What do you think? Leave your opinions in the comment section down below. Want to say thanks heaps as always for tuning into the video. Be sure to leave us a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll catch you next time.